to my channel. Thank you again for your comments. I'm carrying on talking about the article, The Heterogeneity of Autism, and how that challenges the neurodiversity paradigm. So, I got up to the bit where I was talking about how autism shares many features with other conditions at the causal and a behavioural level. And how the lack of clear boundaries between autism and other conditions makes it harder to defend the non-disorder claim by appealing to a more narrowly defined notion of autism, as that is an important aspect of autism heterogeneity. So autism takes a wide range of differing forms, so the non-disorder claim can't be generalised. Now this poses a practical as well as a theoretical problem, since the conception of neurodiversity that denies real disabilities or characterises them as merely social is likely to deprive some people of the support they need. Now there are several responses to this. Response number one is what is described as a narrow conception of the neurodiversity paradigm. This narrow conception of the neurodiversity paradigm only applies to those with so-called high-functioning autism, and maintains that in contrast, people with so-called low-functioning autism are extremely vulnerable, and the neurodiversity paradigm cannot possibly apply to that group. This is the view taken by Jarzma, probably mispronouncing her name, Jarzma and Wellin. But there are problems with this idea that you can rather arbitrarily separate people into two camps. Because autism is, after all, a very messy, complex condition. And people don't tend to fall neatly into one of two camps. Often, when kind of determining who is so-called high-functioning, they use IQ as the metric that is used. So, in other words, having an IQ in a normal range or above would then mean that the person has high-functioning autism. But that's problematic, of course, because, well, this is a very controversial distinction between high-functioning and low-functioning. It's not a binary division. And this is actually now acknowledged in the latest Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which says that the diagnosis should specify the presence or absence of intellectual impairments, that although the DSM indicates, that diagnosis should specify the presence or absence of intellectual impairments, it takes account of the uneven profiles rather than a single score. And severity is defined in terms of the level of support needed, not just merely IQ. So you can't use crude measures as IQ as a divider. I can give an example, obviously personally, is well, on a verbal level, someone would hear me talk using long words, speaking very eloquently, and would describe me as very high functioning. And if you look at my verbal IQ, it is indeed very high. In actual fact, in the top 2% of the population. But my non-verbal IQ, which arguably actually measures more of what is important in terms of actually being able to adult and live functionally, for non-verbal IQ is actually a greater indicator of support needs than verbal IQ. My non-verbal IQ is in the bottom 2%. My non-verbal IQ is in the intellectually challenged range. It is not just below average, it is in the intellectually challenged range. Only 2% of the population would fall that low. So combining that with my extremely slow processing speeds, which has also been tested as in the intellectually disabled range, plus my impaired working memory, and you can see why I would struggle in so many different ways in terms of executive functioning, task initiations, daily living skills, dealing with emergencies, dealing when things go wrong, adulting, dealing with forms, getting important tasks done, prioritising, essentially navigating the adult world. I can't do that on my own. And obviously I can't work and I can't do all those other things that people, that's often used as a kind of functional indicator. So yeah, on one level I'm high functioning when it comes to the fact I can articulate myself and I can talk, and that's what people often notice and will use to determine whether or not someone's high functioning. But I can't work and I really struggle with relationships and socialising and understanding people, and navigating that type of thing on the non-verbal side is really impaired. So non-verbally I am very low functioning, and they sort of balance each other out, so you can't really make you can't really say I'm high functioning and you can't really say I'm low functioning, because they'd both be excluding the parts which contradict that. And that's the case, by the way, for a lot of autistic people. I mean, I'm a pretty extreme case. My uneven profile is kind of off the charts. A psychologist said that to me, so she said, it was pretty extreme, even by Autism standards, that the extent of that uneven profile to be top 2% and bottom 2% at the same time is quite very uncommon statistically in and of itself. Uneven profiles are common in autism. I'm just saying that the extent of the uneven distribution is quite rare in my case, which probably does explain why I really struggle. Because on a sort of non-verbal level, I'm functioning as someone with more severe autism in many ways, but on a verbal level, I'm functioning more closely to someone with very high functioning autism. It's kind of cruel because it means I'm aware of my difficulties and I have insight and I can articulate, but the non-verbal challenges are very real and I can't overcome them. Anyway, I'm going off a bit of a tangent. So yeah, so obviously, it's far more complicated than just IQ measures, and like I say, the DSM have taken that into account by looking at support needs as more of a metric of functioning than IQ. Now, so yeah, the narrow conception of neurodiversity, I would say, can I just say my own opinion on that, is that I think it does hold some merit. Not on the I don't think we should use IQ as a decider. Clearly not. I don't think we can use it. I don't think we can say that all verbal autistics are represented within the neurodiversity paradigm, because after all, I'm highly verbal, and the neurodiversity paradigm certainly doesn't represent me. Autism for me is a disorder, and it is an intrinsic disability for the reasons I just outlined. But I certainly agree that a narrow conception of neurodiversity does have merit in terms of maybe applying the narrow concept of neurodiversity paradigm. That's to say, the very extreme social model, this idea that disability is only caused by society. But now that may well apply to the most able type of autistic person who how can I put it? Yeah, essentially that's it. The most able autistic person. Maybe I'm thinking of someone who is doing pretty well in life, autism isn't holding them back massively. Yeah, it's obviously going to cause them some difficulties, obviously, or they wouldn't get diagnosed presumably. But it's they're still able to make a success. They're still able to fulfil what they want to do, more or less. To have a job that they want to do. Maybe they've managed to secure relationships, that are meaningful to them. They're able to pursue their dreams. They're still going to experience difficulties, but you could say that maybe those difficulties are mainly caused by discrimination and things like people expecting them to make eye contact and stuff like that. And you could say, well, maybe in a more accommodating society, they actually maybe would hardly be disabled at all. I would say that probably does apply to a minority of autistic people, and I suppose we could say that the neurodiversity paradigm would fit them. But I would say that they are quite a privileged minority, and indeed it is that privileged minority that are bellowing from the rooftops about the neurodiversity paradigm as being applicable to all autistics, when clearly it's only really applicable to them. But yeah, I agree that maybe more narrow conception of neurodiversity paradigm does make sense to me. The problem is when they try and impose the neurodiversity paradigm on all and sundry, regardless of their circumstances. Okay, so I'm going to move over to video number 2 now to carry on discussing this article, so moving on to video number 2.